When a humble black mechanic fixes a biker's broken Harley, he has no idea his whole life is about to change. The biker, a member of the infamous Hell's Angels, the reward not what you'd expect. But when his boss finds out, Elijah doesn't get praised, he gets fired. What happens next flips the entire town on its head and sends a message no one will forget. It was a dry Tuesday morning when Elijah Brooks rolled up the steel doors of Ramsey's auto and bike shop, grease still, fresh on his hands from the night before. Known around town as Eli, he wasn't just any mechanic, he was the best. Years of wrench turning, tuning, and rebuilding machines from the ground up had earned him a quiet respect from customers who didn't care much for color, just skill. But not everyone shared that attitude. Ramsey's was in a small town off I-90, a place where Confederate flags still hung in bar windows and outsiders were tolerated, not welcomed. Elijah knew the rules: head down, work hard, avoid attention. He was the only black employee at the shop, and he had earned his place through sweat and silence. Then he came in. A thunderous roar echoed down the street before the shop even saw him. A Harley chopper, black and chrome, ridden by a mountain of a man with tattoos crawling up his neck and a skull patch on his vest. Hell's Angels MC. The shop fell silent. No one approached the man when he walked in, helmet under one arm, eyes hidden behind mirrored aviators. His voice was gravel. "Someone here know how to fix a misfiring twin cam?" Ramsey, the owner, flinched. "We're booked out for a few days," he said quickly, giving a glance at Elijah. "Might be best to try somewhere else." But the biker had already locked eyes with Elijah. "You the guy who fixed that old Triumph for Jeffries last week?" he asked. Elijah nodded slowly. "Yeah, that was me," without another word. The biker wheeled his Harley inside and leaned it on the stand. "Then you're the only one touching this bike." The next few hours were tense. No one spoke to Elijah. Ramsey stared from the office like Elijah had betrayed him, but Elijah kept his head down. The engine problem turned out to be a faulty ignition coil and a worn timing gear. Nothing he hadn't handled a dozen times. He tuned it, tightened it, and finished with a test ride around the block. When he rolled the bike back into the shop, the biker gave one nod, then peeled off his glove and handed Elijah 5 crisp $100 bills and a patch with a flaming skull. "Good work," he grunted. "If you ever need a job, look us up." The biker roared out of the lot, dust kicking up behind him. That's when Ramsey stormed out. "You should have walked away, Eli," he snapped. "We don't work with people like that." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "People like what? Outlaws or people who pay?" "You know what I mean," Ramsey hissed. "Those kinds of bikers bring trouble. You made us look like we're friendly with them." The next day, Elijah came in early, only to find his locker emptied and a pink slip taped to it. "You're fired." No notice, no explanation, no warning. Elijah walked out with nothing but his tool bag and the biker's patch in his pocket. The shock didn't hit until 3 days later. The biker came back, not alone this time. He rolled in with 7 other Hell's Angels, leather-clad, serious-faced, engines rumbling like thunder. They didn't say a word to Ramsey, just parked outside, dismounted, and asked where Elijah was. Ramsey, sweating, tried to wave them off. "He doesn't work here anymore." One of them nodded. "We know, that's why we're here." Word spread fast. Within a week, Elijah's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Bikers, classic car collectors, and even to pro motocross riders had heard the story. Apparently, that one Hell's Angel he helped, he wasn't just a member, he was Reaper Joe, regional chapter president. And he told every rider under him, "If your ride breaks down, Ellie's the only one you trust." 2 months later, Elijah stood in front of Brooks Custom Motors, the sign above his new garage gleaming in the sun. A massive parking lot filled with motorcycles, choppers, and souped-up muscle cars. He hadn't paid a dime for the building. Reaper Joe had covered everything. Said it was an investment in a man who knows loyalty. Across town, Ramsey's auto shop was nearly deserted. The silence in that lot, it was deafening. What began as a simple bike repair turned into a story of bias, loyalty, and unexpected alliances. Elijah didn't just fix a Harley, he fixed his future. And he earned respect from one of the most feared clubs in the country. He got fired for helping the wrong guy, turns out. He helped the right one. Elijah didn't let the bitterness of being fired linger long. He had a shop to run now, and a rapidly growing clientele that didn't care about his skin color. They cared about the sound their engines made when he was done with them. But not everyone was thrilled about his success. 3 weeks after opening Brooks Custom Motors, Elijah arrived one morning to find his front window shattered, tire tracks through the lot, and a hateful slur spray-painted across the sidewall. He stared at it, jaw tight, fists clenched, but instead of calling the police, he took out his phone and made one call. "Joe, we've got a problem." An hour later, 6 motorcycles pulled into the lot like a cavalry. The angels didn't say much. They just nodded, looked around, and got to work. By noon, the wall was repainted. By sundown, a dozen security cameras were installed. One of the angels stayed behind and sat on the shop's porch all night, arms crossed, watching. It was the last time anyone messed with Elijah's place. Over the next few months, the shop exploded in popularity. His waitlist for custom builds stretched into next year. A feature in Ride Nation magazine headlined, "The Mechanic Who Earned the Angel's Wings." Motorcycle clubs from neighboring states made the pilgrimage to his shop, not for fear, but respect. Elijah didn't talk much. He didn't raise prices. He just fixed rides like no one else could. One day, a familiar face came walking through the door, Greg Ramsey, his former boss. Ramsey looked around at the buzzing garage, the chrome gleaming under overhead lights. The wall of biker patches behind the desk, all signed in permanent marker, "Didn't think you'd last," Ramsey muttered, hands in his pockets. Elijah didn't even glance up from the engine he was tuning. "Didn't need you to. I came to ask if you needed help," Ramsey said, swallowing his pride. "Shop closed 2 weeks ago. Could use work." Elijah looked at him for a long second. Then he motioned to a nearby oil drum. "You can start by taking that out back and draining it. Full load. Try not to spill." Ramsey blinked. "You serious?" "Dead serious," Elijah said, grabbing another wrench. "Everyone starts somewhere." The lesson landed hard. Ramsey picked up the drum and walked outside, slower than before. Pride bruised, but humbled. The moment went viral. A passing customer filmed the whole thing and posted it on line. Fired black mechanic becomes boss, hires his racist ex-boss to take out trash. Overnight, Elijah's story lit up social media. News outlets picked it up. People donated to expand his garage. A GoFundMe launched to help him train young, underprivileged mechanics. Within a month, Elijah had opened a second location in another town, employing local kids who never had a shot. But the final twist: on the anniversary of that fateful bike repair, a black truck rolled into the lot. The angels stepped out, followed by a man in a business suit with long hair, mirrored glasses, and an official patch that read, "National President, Eli," he said, shaking Elijah's hand. "Joe tells me your family now." He opened the truck bed. Inside, a custom Harley-Davidson, matte black with flame decals and chrome detail. On the gas tank was one single word: "Justice." "She's yours," the man said. "A gift from all of us." Elijah was speechless. He had been fired for doing the right thing. But that moment proved, sometimes the road to greatness starts with a boot to the curb. The next day, after receiving the custom Harley, Elijah parked it in the front window of the shop behind a velvet rope, where it gleamed like a badge of honor. On a small plaque beneath it, he had etched, "Do good work, treat people right, let the rest take care of itself." Customers lined up outside Brooks Custom Motors before sunrise now, not just for bike repairs, but to meet Elijah Brooks, the mechanic who turned a hateful firing into a highway of opportunity. But the attention brought more than just business. One afternoon, a silver Range Rover pulled into the lot. Out stepped a sharply dressed man in a slate gray suit, sunglasses, and polished boots. Behind him followed a cameraman. "Mr. Brooks," the man asked. "I'm Darius Miles with Rides and Redemption on Netflix. We've been watching your story blow up, and we wanted to film a special about you." Elijah blinked. "Netflix? We're doing a docu-series on underdog builders and shops changing their communities." Darius explained. "But yours is different. You didn't just fix bikes. You rebuilt your whole town's perspective. Elijah scratched his chin, wiping grease off with a rag. Only if I get final say on what goes in it. Weeks later, the crew filmed everything, from Elijah mentoring teens to him showing Ramsey how to properly torque a cylinder head. They even followed him on a weekend ride with Reaper Joe and the Angels through the mountain highways, where the roar of engines echoed like thunder across the cliffs. The show was titled Grease, Grit and Grace, the Elijah Brooks story, and it became a global hit. By the end of the season, Elijah was getting calls from major motorcycle brands offering sponsorships. One offered him a six-figure check to endorse their new custom line. He turned them down. "I don't fix bikes to get rich," he told the reporter at his door. "I fix them because it gives people freedom, power, the feeling that no matter what road they're on, they're in control." But perhaps the most powerful moment came one morning when Elijah arrived early at the shop. A note had been slid under the door. No name, no return address, just a few handwritten lines. "My brother was in a club. We used to hate people like you. Then I saw what you did. I've been clean 6 months. Started school. You reminded me what honor looks like. Thank you." Tears welled in Elijah's eyes. He folded the note carefully and placed it in his wallet, behind his license. He never spoke of it out loud. By year's end, Elijah opened a training garage for formerly incarcerated youth, teaching them engine repair, welding, and small business skills. His first graduating class, 12 students, all with full-time jobs. One of them, Jamal, stood on the stage at their ceremony and said, "I was a statistic before this man taught me how to hold a wrench. Now I'm certified and building bikes next to legends." Applause erupted. Elijah just smiled, arms crossed, leaning in the back, like a proud father watching his kids take off. Full circle. One Sunday, Elijah closed early, took the custom Harley out for a long, winding ride, stopped at a quiet cliffside overlook as the sun began to dip behind the hills. He looked out, helmet in his lap, wind brushing through the trees, and just for a moment, he thought back to that morning at Ramsey's, the one where a stranger in a biker vest asked him to fix an engine and everything changed. He smiled to himself. "Thank you," he whispered. Not to the wind, not to the bike, but to the journey. Months turned into a year. Brooks Custom Motors became more than a garage. It became a movement. The walls of his shop were now covered with signed photos, military patches, police badges, firefighter emblems, and biker club insignias from all over the country. Each one had a story, each one had a name and a moment that mattered. But one day, Elijah received an envelope that stopped him cold. No return address, no postage. Inside, a single Polaroid of his old locker at Ramsey's, the one they had emptied when they fired him. On the back, written in thick black Sharpie, "They never should have pushed you out. You didn't just fix bikes, you fixed me." That was all. Elijah stared at the photo for a long time. The shop quiet around him. He knew immediately who sent it. Ramsey. What most people didn't know was that Ramsey had been quietly showing up to work every day at Brooks Custom, not as a partner, not as a boss, but as a worker, changing oil, sweeping floors, watching, listening. He never once asked for a second chance. He earned one. One evening after closing time, Elijah and Ramsey sat on crates out back, watching the sun drop behind the junkyard. The sky was orange, the hum of insects filling the air. "I don't deserve this," Ramsey muttered. Elijah didn't look at him. "You didn't." He paused. "But you showed up." Ramsey exhaled. "I was wrong, man. About everything. About you." Elijah finally turned to face him. "I'm not looking for apologies," he said. "I'm building something. Either help build or step aside." Ramsey nodded. From that day forward, he never complained again. In time, even the youngest mechanics began calling him Old Man Ram. A bigger stag. Elijah's story reached Capitol Hill. One morning, an email from the White House landed in his inbox. "Dear Mr. Brooks, we would be honored to invite you to speak at the National Workforce Summit as a champion of trades and second chances." It didn't feel real until Secret Service agents showed up to brief him. When Elijah stepped onto the grand stage in Washington, D.C., wearing his oil-stained work boots and a tailored denim jacket stitched with the words, "Brooks built." The room stood in silence. Then came his first words. "I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to disappear after I got fired for helping the wrong person. But the truth is, that moment didn't break me. It built me." The crowd erupted. By the end of the night, major corporations offered to fund his youth apprenticeship program across 10 cities. One of the loudest supporters, Harley-Davidson themselves. They offered him his own limited edition line, the Brooks Redemption Series. Each one came with a quote engraved on the tank: "Rise, ride, repeat." Back home, Elijah walked into the garage. After midnight, the place quiet except for the ticking of cooling engines. Reaper Joe was waiting, sipping a beer beside Elijah's old workbench. "Heard you were on TV." Elijah chuckled. "Didn't mean to be." Joe smirked. "Yeah, well, angels don't usually fly too close to cameras." They sat for a while in silence before Joe reached into his vest and pulled out a small black box. "You ever heard of an honorary patch?" Joe asked. Elijah frowned. "Didn't think that was a thing." "It isn't, but the boys voted." He opened the box. Inside, a platinum skull patch with black flames. Joe placed it in Elijah's hand. "We don't give this to outsiders. You're not one anymore." Elijah stared at it for a long time, not because he wanted to wear it, but because he understood what it meant: respect, brotherhood, redemption. He closed the box, nodded once, and said, "Let's ride." Elijah Brooks didn't just fix an engine. He restarted a legacy. He taught a town what dignity looks like in coveralls, how loyalty wears grease-stained hands, and how sometimes helping the wrong person leads to the rightest path of all. It was a warm spring morning when Elijah unlocked the doors of Brooks Custom Motors to find someone waiting on the curb. A teenage boy, skinny, nervous, hoodie over his head. His shoes were worn, one lace missing. In his hand, a crumpled flyer from Elijah's youth mechanic program. "You Elijah?" the boy asked quietly. Elijah nodded. "That's me. They said you give kids second chances, even if they messed up." Elijah looked him over. The bruised knuckles, the tired eyes, the hunger that had nothing to do with food. He didn't ask for resume. He didn't ask about his record. Instead, he walked to the tool wall, grabbed an old socket wrench, and held it out. "You know what this is?" The boy hesitated. "Kind of." "Good. Clean it. Then I'll show you what it can do." Wrenches and redemption. The boy's name was Malik. 16. Caught in the system. In and out of shelters. No family. But after 3 weeks of working beside Elijah and Ramsey, something changed. He stopped flinching when doors opened. He started showing up early. He stopped looking over his shoulder. One evening, Malik stayed late finishing an engine install. When Elijah walked in to check, he found the boy sitting in the front seat of the bike. Not riding, just staring at the controls. "You ever been on one?" Elijah asked. Malik shook his head. "People like me don't ride bikes like this." Elijah chuckled. "People like you build them now more than a garage that summer." Brooks Custom unveiled something no one saw coming: the Redemption Ride Rally, an open road event where riders from all walks of life would cruise across the state to raise money for youth mechanics. The first event drew 1,000 bikes, the second, 10,000. State troopers escorted them, and Elijah led the front, riding Justice, the custom bike given to him by the Hells Angels. Media coverage exploded. Elijah became a national speaker on trade programs and second chance employment. He was featured in Time, Forbes, and Motor Trend, all in the same month. But the moment that mattered most to him when Malik, once a homeless kid, finished his first solo bike build. They rolled it out to the front lot, flat black with deep green trim. On the tank, painted in raw brush strokes, one word: hope. Elijah stood back and nodded. "That's yours?" Malik blinked. "You mean, mine? You built it. You ride it." One afternoon, a sleek black muscle car rolled into the shop. Out stepped a man in his 60s, sharp gray beard, suit jacket with motorcycle boots. He walked with confidence. It was Senator Cole, one of the most vocal critics of biker culture, and someone who had once proposed laws to shut down biker-run garages like Elijah's. "Mr. Brooks," he said, extending a hand. I owe you an apology." Elijah folded his arms. "This better be good." The senator smiled nervously. "My grandson. He was headed down a bad road. Then he ended up in your program. He's clean now. Got a job. Built his first bike last month. Said you saved his life." Elijah looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't save him. He chose to be saved. I just handed him a wrench." The senator nodded. "I want to help. We're writing legislation for national mechanic apprenticeship grants. I want your name on the bill." Soon after, Elijah stood beside the President of the United States as the Brooks Trades and Redemption Act was signed into law, unlocking millions in funding for garage-based youth programs in all 50 states. Back home, Malik watched the ceremony on an old TV in the shop, his hand resting on the handlebars of hope. "Damn," he whispered. "That's our shop on TV, Ramsey." Wiping down a carburetor nearby, muttered with a smile, "Told you the man was a legend." Late one evening, after the shop had closed and the town had gone quiet, Elijah walked alone through the garage. He touched every bench, every bike, every plaque. He paused at the photo of himself on opening day, standing in an empty building with nothing but a toolbox and a vision. He whispered, "We made it, Ma, we made it." Behind him, the soft sound of footsteps. It was Malik, holding to helmets. "Sunset ride." Elijah nodded. "Yeah, let's go chase the horizon." And together, teacher and student, past and future, roared out into the night, engines echoing like thunder, each mile behind them proving that the road to greatness starts not in power or wealth, but in the courage to do what's right, even when the whole world tells you to back down. Years passed. Elijah Brooks became a name spoken in schools, garages, biker rallies, and even Capitol halls, not because he sought fame, but because he stood for something rare: dignity without ego, strength without violence, and integrity without apology. What started as one man fixing a bike for the wrong customer turned into a nationwide ripple effect, one that saved lives, healed grudges, and rebuilt broken paths. The shop walls, once bare, were now living history. Signed photos, first-time riders, second-chance mechanics, patches from rival biker gangs who'd shaken hands for the first time under Elijah's roof. And in the center of it all, above the main service bay, a hand-carved wooden sign hung proudly: "Brooks built where the road to redemption begins." Elijah never forgot where he started. He never boasted, never bragged, just kept handing wrenches to kids no one believed in, until they believed in themselves. And every time a bike rolled out of that garage, rumbling down the open road into a new future, it carried with it a piece of the truth. Sometimes, the most powerful engine isn't on the bike. It's the one inside a man who refuses to quit.